You thought power came from being impressive, from being intelligent, from being capable, from being visible. So you showed up. You replied within seconds. You explained yourself constantly. You made yourself available to everyone at every hour. You showed generosity with your time, your energy, your attention. And what did it get you? They stopped calling when you were always there. They stopped chasing when you never ran. They stopped valuing what cost them nothing to access. History says something colder than you were taught. Power does not belong to the most capable. It belongs to the least accessible. You are not ignored because you lack value. You are ignored because you are available. Scarcity creates power, and abundance, when uncontrolled, creates obedience. I am going to show you exactly how this works. But you must be willing to become something most people are terrified to become: rare. The scene most people never talk about. In 1938, Howard Hughes was the most powerful man in America. He owned airlines, he built aircraft, he directed films, he dated the most celebrated women in the world. He was everywhere: magazines, newspapers, social events. His face was on every cover. His name was in every conversation. And then he disappeared. Not slowly, completely. He stopped taking calls. He stopped giving interviews. He stopped appearing in public. For years, no one could reach him. No one could predict him. No one could get to him. And what happened to his power? It multiplied. The less he was seen, the more people needed to know where he was. The less he spoke, the more weight his silence carried. The less he was accessible, the more governments, corporations, and billionaires bent themselves in half trying to get 5 minutes with him. He did not lose relevance by disappearing. He became a myth, and myths cannot be controlled. This is what Machiavelli understood, and what most people still don't. People do not judge you by who you are. They judge you by what they can access. If you are always reachable, always explaining, always clarifying your intentions, you remove tension. And tension is leverage. Leverage is power. In politics, in business, in relationships. When access to you is unlimited, your perceived rank drops automatically. Not because you are less, because you are common. The market punishes abundance. It rewards constraint. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who is seen as ordinary by his people has already lost half his authority before making a single decision. He understood that power is theatrical. It requires distance to create awe. A king who eats with the servants is no longer a king in their minds. He is a man, and men are not feared. Men are tested. Look at the fashion industry, and you will see this law operating in its purest form. Hermes produces fewer Birkin bags than the market demands. Not because they cannot make more, because they understand that the moment supply meets demand, desire collapses. The waiting list is not a logistics problem. It is a power structure. Women worth tens of millions of dollars are told to wait, and they wait gladly. Because being made to wait by Hermes is itself a signal of status. You are doing the opposite with yourself. You are mass-producing yourself. Think about what that means for a second. You are the brand that flooded its own market. You answered every message within minutes. You showed up to every invitation, wanted or not. You explained yourself to people who never once asked for an explanation. You gave opinions no one requested. You made yourself permanently, completely, exhaustingly reachable. You ran a clearance sale on your own presence, and then you stood there confused, wondering why no one was willing to pay full price. This is not a character flaw. This is a misunderstanding of economics. You treated yourself like a product with unlimited supply, and unlimited supply has one inevitable outcome. The price drops to zero. That is not metaphor. That is what happened to your perceived value in the minds of the people around you. Not because you are less, because you trained them to expect more for nothing. Machiavelli would not tell you to be cruel. He would tell you to be controlled, to reveal selectively, to speak strategically, to withdraw attention when necessary, because attention is currency, and whoever spends it carelessly becomes poor. The man who speaks at every meeting becomes background noise. The man who speaks once, slowly, and leaves silence before and after is the man the room remembers. This is not about performance. It is about understanding the physics of perception. But here is where most people misunderstand scarcity. They think it is a tactic. Delay replies, act busy, appear distant. That is weakness disguised as strategy. Nietzsche would laugh at that. He spent years completely alone in the Swiss Alps, writing in near total isolation. He had almost no readers, no followers, no approval. He was dismissed during his lifetime as a madman. Publishers rejected him, colleagues ignored him. The academic world closed its doors. He did not perform scarcity. He had genuinely outgrown the need for the crowd. He wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." This is the distinction that changes everything. Think about the people who have commanded the most authority in your life. Were they the ones who always responded, who were always available, who always explained themselves? Or were they the ones you could never fully predict? The ones whose silence made you wonder? The ones whose approval felt like it had to be earned? That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. Scarcity is not something you perform. It is something that naturally emerges when you become sovereign, when you no longer need approval, immediate reassurance, external validation. The man who needs less becomes untouchable because he is not negotiating from hunger. He is choosing from abundance. This is the paradox. Externally scarce, internally full. That combination destabilizes people because most humans operate from deficiency, and deficiency is predictable, but sovereignty is not. We live in an era where attention is more valuable than gold, and you give it freely. You reply instantly, you react publicly, you explain yourself in paragraphs, you post your process before you finish the work. You announce your goals before you achieve them, and you call it transparency. It is not transparency, it is submission. When you over-communicate, you signal dependence on the outcome. When you over-explain, you signal fear of being misunderstood. When you rush to respond, you signal anxiety about losing relevance. And anxiety is visible. Coco Chanel understood this. At the height of her power, she would routinely cancel appearances, decline interviews, and disappear for months at a time. The fashion press did not ignore her for it. They became obsessed. Every reappearance was treated as an event. Every statement was studied for hidden meaning. She was not chasing the room's attention. The room was waiting for hers. But here is the part no one talks about. Chanel did not create this dynamic by playing games. She created it by being genuinely consumed with building something. When you are deeply invested in your own world, you naturally become less available to everyone else's. The scarcity is a byproduct of the work, not a substitute for it. The most powerful individual in any room is the one least attached to the room's approval. That detachment is not arrogance, it is psychological independence, and independence creates gravitational pull. Value is created by limitation, diamonds, time, access, information. Unlimited supply destroys perceived worth. This applies to you. If your time is unlimited, your presence becomes ordinary. If your emotional investment is unlimited, your affection becomes cheap. If your availability is unlimited, your attention loses weight. If your opinion is offered on everything, it becomes worth nothing. Scarcity forces people to evaluate. Evaluation creates tension. Tension creates importance. Importance creates power. Warren Buffett does not take every meeting. He does not return every call. He does not attend every conference that requests him. He selects, slowly, deliberately. And because he selects so carefully, being selected by him means something that money alone cannot buy. He has been offered more money than most countries produce. and he still says no more than he says yes. That no is not rudeness. It is the architecture of his power. When everything is accessible, nothing is precious. When you are everywhere, you are nowhere. Most people understand this about objects. They understand that a rare painting is worth more than a mass-produced print, but they refuse to apply the same law to themselves. You are making yourself a mass-produced print. Stop. But here is the danger, and I will not skip this part. Scarcity without substance is manipulation. If you withdraw without value, you become irrelevant. If you become distant without depth, you become forgettable. If you go silent without building anything in that silence, the curtain eventually falls and there is nothing standing behind it. Power is not about disappearing. It is about being selectively present. This is where most people who discover these ideas go wrong. They start ignoring messages, canceling plans, playing hard to reach, but they have built nothing behind the silence. There is no fortress behind the walls they raised, just empty space and an increasingly confused social circle. When you use scarcity as a mask, people eventually see through it, and what they find underneath is worse than ordinary. It is hollow. Machiavelli would say, control access. Nietzsche would say, become worth accessing. Only when both are true does scarcity transform into authority. The silence of a man building an empire is terrifying to those around him. The silence of a man hiding is just silence. One creates paranoid curiosity. The other creates pity. You need to know which one you are sitting in right now. When you stop chasing, people feel it. When you stop overinvesting, they recalibrate. When you stop explaining yourself, they begin interpreting you differently. Because humans are wired to pursue what feels uncertain. Certainty kills intrigue. Predictability lowers status. Controlled unpredictability elevates it. Before every album release, Jay-Z goes silent. No interviews, no previews, no social media presence. No leaks. The world holds its breath. Music journalists write speculation pieces. Fans build theories from the smallest crumbs. When the music drops, it is not just a release. It is an arrival. He did not manufacture that response. He built it through years of calibrated scarcity. Compare that to an artist who posts every thought, every session, every demo in real time. By the time the album drops, the world is already exhausted from the journey. There is nothing left to anticipate. You are posting every demo, not occasionally, obsessively. You are narrating your own construction in real time, hoping someone will applaud the scaffolding. You are turning your becoming into content, your struggle into entertainment, your process into a performance for people who will forget about it by tomorrow. And the worst part, you think this is building connection. You think the vulnerability is working. You think people respect the transparency. They do not. They consume it. Then they move on. And somewhere in their subconscious, they have filed you under available, under predictable, under someone who needs to be watched to feel real. You have made your evolution into a live broadcast, and live broadcasts do not create legends. They create familiarity, and familiarity is the enemy of power. Stop telling people what you are working on. Stop explaining your evolution as it happens. Stop making your process public before your results are undeniable. Let the gap between your old version and your new version be the statement. You do not need to be chaotic. You need to be non-dependent. That is the difference between a man performing power and a man who has actually built it. Most people get this wrong. They think scarcity is about behavior. It is not. It is about what you need. The man who needs approval is always one rejection away from collapse. The man who needs to be understood is always one silence away from panic. The man who needs validation is always negotiating, always performing, always slightly afraid. That fear is visible. People smell it, and they use it. Greta Garbo retired from Hollywood at 36. Peak fame, studios offering her everything. She said, "I want to be alone." She meant it. For 50 years, every journalist, every filmmaker, every major name in the industry tried to reach her, tried to photograph her, tried to bring her back. None of them could. Because the woman who needed nothing from Hollywood became the only thing Hollywood still wanted. She did not play hard to get, she was genuinely done. That is the difference. When rejection does not move you, you cannot be controlled. When silence does not scare you, you cannot be pressured. When their opinion stops mattering, their leverage disappears. You become still, and stillness in a world of anxious people is terrifying. It is not calm, it is a different kind of dangerous. This is not philosophy, this is a mechanism. B.F. Skinner ran a simple experiment. Pigeons, levers, food. When food came every time they pressed casually, no urgency. Guaranteed reward kills desire. When food came randomly, they became obsessed, compulsive, could not stop. Same lever, different pattern. You are the guaranteed lever. That is the problem. You respond every time, show up every time, react every time, and people press you casually, without urgency, without appreciation, because you trained them to change the pattern, not as a trick, as a reflection of what you actually value. When your response is uncertain, the brain shifts into pursuit. When your presence is not guaranteed, it becomes worth something. When your approval must be earned, people start trying. This is also why chasing social media validation destroys you. Every time you refresh for likes, you signal hunger. Every time you post for reaction, you audition. Every time you measure your worth in engagement, you hand them the scale, and whoever holds the scale holds the power. The people who command real authority online are not the ones with the most followers. They are the ones whose silence gets more attention than other people's noise. Build that. Here is what no one tells you about scarcity. It compounds. Every time you hold your reaction, you build composure. Every time you decline what does not serve you, you signal weight. Every time you leave before they are ready, you leave an impression. None of these feels significant alone, but they stack, and the stack becomes a reputation. Think about the people in your life who carry authority without a title. No announcement, no performance. They just walk in, and the energy shifts. They built that. One held reaction at a time. One unnecessary explanation they never gave. One approval they never chased. You are building something every day too. The question is what? Every time you over-explain, withdrawal. Every time you react publicly to something small, withdrawal. Every time you change course because someone disapproved, withdrawal. Enough withdrawals and the account is empty. Then you wonder why no one takes you seriously. You cannot buy this back. You cannot perform your way back. You rebuild it the same way it was lost, one decision at a time, in silence. Stop waiting for a better moment. Stop responding the second anxiety tells you to. Stop explaining decisions that need no explanation. Stop posting your process before your results exist. Stop making yourself available to people who have not earned it. Stop measuring yourself in other people's reactions. That is where you start, not with a strategy, with a stop, because the man who cannot hold one reaction, who cannot stay silent for 1 hour, who cannot resist one unnecessary explanation, that man is not ready for power. He is still negotiating with the crowd, and the crowd will take everything you give them and give you nothing back. So build something worth protecting, something so consuming that you naturally become less available, something so real that silence becomes your loudest statement, something so yours that their opinion of it becomes irrelevant. That is the mission, not to appear scarce, to become too full to be empty for them. You thought being more visible would make you powerful. It made you predictable. You thought being more available would make you valued. It made you assumed. You thought being more transparent would make you trusted. It made you readable, and readable means controllable. Scarcity is not distance. It is discipline. It is controlled access to something rare. Start here, today. Stop explaining your decisions to people who did not ask for a report. Stop reacting reacting publicly to things that do not require your energy. Stop making yourself available to everyone as if your presence costs nothing. Stop announcing your plans before you execute them. Stop checking whether people noticed, because it does cost something. It costs the perception of your value. Become internally sovereign first. Build something real behind the silence. Then limit external access to it and watch how perception shifts, because the world does not reward potential. It rewards controlled presence. The man who speaks less is studied more. The man who appears less is sought more. The man who needs less is offered more. Scarcity creates power, but only when the power exists within you first. Build that, and then go silent, not because you are playing a game, because you finally have something worth protecting. You were never undervalued. You were overexposed. The world is not ignoring you. It has already measured you and decided you are easy to reach. They're not disrespecting you. They are reacting to the position you trained them to place you in. Accessible, predictable, safe. And safe men are never powerful. The question is what you are going to do with that information. If this hits something, subscribe and start becoming rare. Mindferal.